know you've got quite an intense programme today, so I'm going to try and move through this quite briskly. But this is what I'm going to talk about, a bit of orientation about our company. I'll keep the advertising to a minimum, but forgive me if I indulge myself with a couple of points. Some background, obviously, on the UK auto industry itself. What are the main drivers in the low-carbon car market? How we're doing so far? What actually is happening right now? And what's going to happen in the next 10 years? And what's going to happen in the next 40 years? And what is, I want to say right from the outset, one of the most important developments in recent years is the establishment of the Automotive Council. This is a body created by Lord Mandelson and maintained sensibly by Vince Cable and Mark Chris, where government gets together with the British industry leaders, academics, technologists, and is planning the future of the low-carbon automotive market in this country for the foreseeable future. I think it's a really valuable organisation. I'm part of it, so are the rest of the industry, and it really underpins everything I'm going to talk to you about. Ford of Britain, this is our 100th year. We incorporated 100 years ago, our centenary this year. It's a vital market. It's our fourth biggest market in the world. We've had market leadership for 33 years in cars, 44 years in vans. But it's tough to maintain that record, I can tell you. So this isn't hubris. The Fiesta is currently the UK's #1 best-selling car. We don't just sell cars here. We directly employ over 15,000 people in the UK in research, engineering, manufacturing, as well as administrative functions. Our technical centre in Dunton employs 3,500 engineers, most of them employed on low-carbon automotive technology development, and that's a really important centre for us. Our purchasing spend is $3.5 billion with UK suppliers, and we just announced a $1.5 billion investment in the UK in low-carbon automotive technology development. Most of that's going to be spent at Dunton and at our engine plants at Dagenham and Bridgend. So you can see we're a long time around and we're heavily invested. I'm not going to go through all of these points on the UK automotive industry itself, but you can see that it has scale. It has scale in terms of manufacturing, employment levels, value to the economy in terms of exports, and importantly, areas of expertise. Formula One is an obvious example, but the grouping of premier car manufacturers with their specialist engineering expertise is also very valuable for us. Jaguar, Land Rover, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Aston Martin, etc. Ford and JLR account for about 80% of automotive R&D in the UK. And as you can see, the automotive sector is Europe. Europe's largest investor, vying with Pharma at 20 billion euros. These are the main drivers in our sector, the automotive sector, for the development of low-carbon vehicles. EU legislation on car CO2 emissions has been introduced with direct implications, obviously, for all vehicle manufacturers. And I'll show you the track in a minute relative to other regulatory regimes in the global marketplace. Government's fiscal policies are also now increasingly, understandably, focused on CO2 emissions performance of the vehicle. In the UK, we have both VED, vehicle excise duty, and company car tax based on CO2 emissions, with substantial incentives for those CO2 cars. The reality is, for the majority of consumers, environmental concerns are still not at the top of the priority list when it comes to buying a new car. Consumer attitudes have developed, though, and increasingly we see CO2 emissions stroke fuel economy as a very important factor in the buying decision. Most consumers are, of course, interested in the overall cost of ownership, and increasingly so now in the last couple of years. And this, I think, is going to be a critical factor in the forward development of low CO2 vehicles in this country. I'm sorry that this is probably a bit difficult to see It's a very important slide, but the basic point is that European CO2 legislation for vehicles is the toughest in the world. Requirements are significantly more stringent than in the US or China. Only Japan has similar standards. And this slide tells you something else too. There are several regional and national targets that an automotive manufacturer has to meet. And you can see the track on the European Union is heading towards 2020, when the Commission wants to see an average fleet CO2 emission level of 95 grams per kilometre. This is about 75 to 80 miles per gallon. By the way, all manufacturers, or most manufacturers, certainly ourselves, have vehicles already in that. But that's a fleet average target for all of a company's production. So the current EU target is 130 grams per kilometre in 2015. The EU target is 95 grams per kilometre in 2020, which is an ambitious goal, but we're all working towards trying to achieve that. So it's a big challenge, a huge task, technically and from a business perspective. It isn't an exaggeration to say that reducing CO2 emissions is probably the biggest, most significant challenge facing the auto industry going forward. And it will continue to drive cost into the business, and that's an important factor. The need to reduce emissions means that there's probably going to be a clutch of technologies that are going to be working together in parallel from all of us as companies in order to step our way towards these increasingly stringent regulatory requirements. All major car, this is just some examples from advertising within our industry, all major car companies make reference to their vehicles' CO2 performance in promotional literature. Increasingly, car ads and websites feature information promoting the low carbon credentials of particular models. We all have our sub-brand economy-focused derivatives. There are different approaches. BMW's there's efficient dynamics. VW have the Blue Motion brand. Toyota's capitalised on its leadership in hybrid vehicles, and they've used the Prius as their brand champion. And we have our own too, which I will come to. As a result of increasing efforts in the context of the regulatory environment, the industry has made substantial improvements, with emissions falling in each of the last 12 years. In the UK, average CO2 emissions have fallen by over 21% since 1997. Importantly, though, the progress is accelerating rapidly. In the last 3 years in our market, all the mass manufacturers have introduced these economy low CO2 focused sub-brands. We have a Fiesta at 98 grams per kilometre. My daughter has that, and she gets 76 miles to the gallon. And I'm delighted at that because routinely I tend to pay for that diesel consumption. But it's brilliant. Younger people are sensitised to it. People concerned about running costs are sensitised to it. All of the major manufacturers have sub 100 grams per kilometre. In other words, in the vanguard of this effort to reduce the overall fleet with both petrol and diesel technologies, as you will see. It's also, just stressing that point with a piece of data, over 27% of cars registered in the UK last year were below 130 grams per kilometre, which is the EU target for 2019. So you can see the groundswell moving along. It's not just the small cars. I don't want to leave you with that impression too. There's activity across the premium brands as well. Both volume and premium manufacturers have made real strides. On multi-purpose vehicles, MPVs tend to be larger for a larger family. They produce 29% less CO2 emissions than 97. Executive cars down 25%. And as I said, the downward trend is accelerating very rapidly, pushed by a mixture of attitudinal change, in other words, demand, but also regulatory direction as well. The Automotive Council's, I think, most significant output has been the definition on one sheet of paper, which I'm going to show you in a minute, of the likely technology roadmap and the mix of advanced technologies that are going to power our lower CO2 achievement towards the ultimate goal, zero emissions over a 40-year time frame. And I'm going to show you that very shortly. Here are some of the, I like to do my bit for the trade body, RS&T, so here are some of the current examples in the industry of these low CO2-focused fuel economy brands. You can see the Mini E, plug-in Prius, VW Golf Blue Motion, the Nissan Leaf, our own Focus E-Kinetic, low CO2 brand, the Honda Insight, and Jaguar, Limo Green, and the Vauxhall Ampera, destined hopefully for those near port. Now, it's being driven by this powerful mix of regulation, fiscal stimuli, industry innovation, and clear attitudinal change in the marketplace itself, which I'll show you in a minute how we're trying to influence that too. And the UK government has recently announced, and all these are acting in concert, and there's considerable pressure behind them too. The UK government has recently announced it supports a 30% reduction in CO2 across all sectors. So there is a momentum in all of these drivers to reduce the CO2, and they cohere around the targets and around investment in low CO2 technology. Ultimately, the target is 0% emissions, but that's a little way off. So, examples of low carbon products are available in all segments. I mentioned the E-Kinetic Fiesta, that's ours, that's 75 mpg, 98 grams, and we have a Focus equivalent below 100 as well. Most manufacturers are looking at an array of technologies, as I mentioned, going forward. Here's a selection of them. The Automotive Council's technology workstream is clear that it'll take a portfolio of technologies in order to gradually get these numbers down. Downsized advanced turbocharging technology offers perhaps 10 to 20% more improvement for the next generation of diesel engines, and direct injection petrol engines, transferring some of the technologies from diesel engines, will achieve close to today's diesel levels with a substantial cost advantage. And there is a commercial as well as a technical feasibility issue attached to this. What will drive in the short term towards 2020, low CO2 down, is actually this significant development in gas, petrol, internal combustion engine technology. Why? Because it's affordable to the manufacturer and the consumer. You can bring the costs down. Diesel engines tend to be more costly because of the things you have to hang off them in order to meet a variety of regulatory requirements. New automatic transmissions can bring 5% off CO2 target. Hybrid powertrains obviously offer significant opportunities in a city and urban environment in particular. And you'll probably see the first applications of electric and plug-in electric cars in an urban environment. Personally, I think vans, delivery vans, is another area where you're going to see the initial take-up in plug-in hybrids, and certainly battery electric vehicles. If anyone spends any time in London, as I'm sure we all do, you can see how that can happen. If you see the way deliveries are made in this city and the way people move around this city. Vans in an urban environment with a defined range, so that you don't get range anxiety. You can see how those markets will be in the vanguard, I think, of the electrification take-up. This is the chart that I always show. It's on one chart and it shows the future of the automotive industry in the UK in a snapshot. You can get it off the BIS website, and it's published. And I think it's really worth looking at, because down here you've got the time scale, and here you've got the portfolio of technologies and some notion of their phasing as they're coming in. And you can, it's not shown there on the top, it is shown on the top, the fleet average CO2 targets. I mentioned 95, drop down, and there's the 2020. And obviously at 2040, you can see some of those more advanced technologies coming in, and you can see that we're moving inevitably towards the goal of zero CO2 emissions. I like this slide. It's a consensed industry slide. All of the global majors represented in the UK put this together, and we're all working on it. The Automotive Council, its objectives are not just to usher in these technologies, but there is a UK PLC objective in here too, which I happen to think is absolutely vital. We want the UK as a base for the development of low-carbon automotive technologies. One of its major goals is to reflate the UK supply chain. There are areas of expertise in engineering and manufacturing still in this country which the Automotive Council aims to capitalise on. Lightweighting, composites, intelligent transport solutions, battery vehicles, electrification and electric motors in general. From our studies on the Council, these are areas where British engineering and manufacturing companies have competitive advantage. Those are going to be the areas that we're going to press on as an industry, with government support, things like the demonstrator programme that Mike mentioned. Believe it or not, that's £5,000 max, and it still leaves electric cars as expensive. You're at the start of a process here. But that kind of thing sends a strong signal to car industry boardrooms around the world that the government gets it, and that we're prepared to invest. Ford is, Nissan, look what they're doing with the Nissan Leaf, look what Toyota are doing at Burnaston with the Toyota Auris, look what Honda are doing. JLR are going to keep all their factories running. That is as a result of successive governments, if I'm honest, having a coherent agenda around engineering, manufacturing and low carbon economy and low carbon automotive technology development. I think I've already indulged myself on the advertising there. I'll come back to that at the end. Let me just talk about marketing. I mentioned the importance of consumer attitudinal change, and the industry is trying to engage with the consumer in a positive way to try and stimulate that demand so that it's pull as well as push. This is our website, and it's one example. VW were here, Rolls, Bentley, they'd be saying the same thing. Of course, we provide clear CO2 information on all our vehicles. We've made it, tried to work hard to make it accessible, but we also include an eco-calculator that allows the customer to check how the fuel consumption and CO2 emissions compare with our competitors and your existing vehicle. We're also working with new media tools, obviously Facebook, YouTube and Twitter as a means of communicating with the customer. Our industry tends to be pretty good at adopting intelligently major innovations of that sort. The SMMT colour-coded new car fuel economy label is a good example, I think, of current environmental messaging. It's often mentioned in other sectors too as a means of discriminating between goods in various sectors in terms of CO2 emissions. It's been around for some time now. It's been recently well received by the public. It's displayed on every new car in the showroom. And we survey it as an industry through the Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership to make sure that it actually happens. And it's going to transfer to the used cars as well. I'm getting the raised eyebrow, so I just want to summarise with this slide. The beginnings of the market are already there, it's here now. The question is how we develop that market in the coming years, and at what pace the new technologies are ushered in. What costs and functionality trade-offs are going to exist for the consumer. What about the infrastructure and investment challenges for government? We could talk for hours about that. The decarbonisation of electricity and recharging networks underpins the future of plug-in hybrids, and there's work going on there, but it's a major infrastructure challenge. And here's my last piece of blatant advertising. All these are available now. They're all brand new. That's on your Focus, C-Max, and new but I have a serious point too, which is we're building the market for low carbon cars by making sure they're affordable. That's the issue. That's the challenge, to make sure they're affordable. We're shifting the market by making low carbon the norm. For the automotive industry, this boils down to significant investment in technology, an awareness of competitiveness and the consumer. From UK PLC's perspective, it's about developing our areas of expertise and maintaining our position in the vanguard of low carbon automotive technology development and R&D.